My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 62 years old, a widow, and for the past 15 years, I've lived a life that looked simple, even ordinary, to everyone around me. People assumed I survived on my late husband's engineering pension and a modest insurance payout. And that's exactly what I wanted them to believe. But on the day of my son's wedding, the careful mask I had worn for so long was ripped away in an instant. The wedding itself was breathtaking. My son, Ethan Hayes, 32, looked happier than I had seen him in years as he waited for his bride, Lauren Miller, to walk down the aisle. The Millers' estate stretched across rolling Virginia hills, complete with a private chapel large enough for hundreds of guests. Everything about it sparkled with money and meticulous planning. Lauren's gown must have cost more than most people earn in a year, and her family glowed with pride. I had chosen a simple navy dress, paired with my grandmother's pearls. To anyone watching, I was exactly what they expected me to be, a respectable widow keeping to her quiet corner of the celebration. That invisibility had been my armor for years. After the ceremony came the reception, lavish, glittering with flowers, music, and champagne. From the back of the ballroom, I watched Ethan and Lauren take their first dance as husband and wife. I thought the night would pass quietly. I was wrong. Lauren approached me with her parents at her side. Her voice was sweet, but carried that edge of someone eager to put something on display. "Mom, Dad, this is Margaret Hayes, Ethan's mother." Her father, Charles Miller, turned politely toward me. But then his face changed. His eyes narrowed, his lips parted, and he spoke words that froze everything around us. "Margaret Hayes, aren't you the woman who sat on the acquisition board 3 years ago? The one who bought my company?" The air shifted. Conversations around us faltered. Lauren's face drained of color. Her mother's eyes cut sharply toward me. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of every gaze in the room pressing for the truth. My invisibility had shattered. On the outside, my life looked plain. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, drove a 10-year-old sedan, and shopped in the same stores as my neighbors. My furniture was comfortable, never extravagant. Anyone visiting would walk away believing I lived frugally, stretching a widow's pension as far as it could go. That was intentional. I learned long ago that the surest way to protect a secret is to play into people's assumptions. Look as though you're just scraping by, and no one imagines you're quietly building something far bigger. I never wanted diamonds on my wrists or designer bags on my shoulder. I valued freedom, moving through life unnoticed. I often reminded myself of Warren Buffett, one of the richest men alive, yet still living in the same house he bought decades ago. Wealth wasn't about cars or clothes. It was about choices, discipline, and patience. That became my model. Even at Ethan's wedding, my pearls weren't about luxury. They belonged to my grandmother, a quiet symbol of the women before me who endured hardship with strength. My navy dress wasn't meant to dazzle. It was chosen to blend, to let me breathe and think. Of course, the disguise came at a cost. People underestimated me. Some even pitied me, assuming I'd eventually need help in my old age. Lauren herself once casually asked if I worried about money, and if Ethan might have to support me one day. I smiled and let her believe it. She had no idea my so-called modesty was not weakness, but strategy. And for 15 years, it worked, until Charles Miller's words began tugging at the curtain I had pulled so carefully across my life. To understand how I came to that wedding with a hidden fortune, you'd have to go back more than a decade. My late husband, Richard Hayes, was an engineer like me. We met in our 20s, working long hours at a tech company in Austin. Richard was brilliant, quiet, endlessly curious. In 2010, after years of tinkering, he created a power management system that made cell phone batteries last much longer without increasing their size. A small idea, but it solved a massive problem. At first, we thought it might bring in enough money to retire a little earlier than planned. Nothing extravagant. But when we sold the patent in 2012, the check was for $25 million. I remember staring at those numbers, certain they couldn't be real. $25 million. It felt like stepping into another world. That very day, Richard and I made a decision that shaped everything afterward. We told Ethan only that we'd received a comfortable payout, enough to take care of our needs, but nothing beyond that. We never shared the real number. He was 24 then, fresh out of graduate school, eager to carve out his own path in marketing. We wanted him to chase his dreams without the shadow of wealth following him. With the money secured, Richard and I began to study. We started cautiously, investing in stable stocks, learning the rhythms of the market. Over time, we grew bolder, branching into growth companies, real estate, and early-stage tech firms. Richard had a rare gift for spotting value where others saw only risk. I balanced his vision with discipline, dissecting every deal until I knew it inside out. By 2015, our portfolio had doubled. By 2018, it had multiplied again, reaching $200 million. When Richard passed in 2020 after a sudden illness, I was left with grief, memories, and a portfolio worth over $700 million. Continuing without him was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But I carried on, managing every investment with the same care we had built together. Today, that fortune has grown close to $1 billion, a number so vast it feels unreal. But behind every dollar lies discipline, endless nights of research, and the determination to secure our family's future. And still no one knew. To Ethan, to our neighbors, to Lauren's family, I was only a widow living modestly. I preferred it that way. What good would come from people seeing me differently? What would it do to Ethan to be judged not for his own work, but as the son of a wealthy woman? That balance mattered to me more than anything. But that night, under the reception's bright lights, Charles Miller's recognition began to unravel everything. I could see the shift in Lauren's expression. Her politeness had always carried an edge, something sharp behind her smile. Until then, she had dismissed me easily, seeing me as harmless. But now her eyes held something else, curiosity mixed with calculation. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and support my channel for more stories like this. Lauren had always been driven. She studied business at one of the best universities, spent her summers working for her father's firm, and once believed she would one day inherit the reins of Miller Industries. That dream disappeared the day I quietly acquired the company through an investment front. Under new management, the business flourished, but the Millers no longer held the power. To Lauren, I hadn't just been invisible. I had unknowingly stepped into the role she thought was destined for her. My son Ethan, on the other hand, lived by his own rules. He worked tirelessly, saved diligently, and built his career as a marketing manager with a solid reputation, all without ever realizing his mother could have easily funded his ambitions many times over. He thought Lauren respected him for his independence and strength of character. Maybe she did, but in the weeks leading up to their wedding, I noticed her asking questions that unsettled me. Did I ever worry about retirement? Did I think Ethan might have to take care of me someday? At the time, I dismissed them as polite small talk. Looking back, I wasn't so sure. Charles's recognition had ignited something in her. I saw it in the sharp gleam of her eyes when the truth dawned on her. For Lauren, knowledge wasn't just information, it was leverage. And the opportunity she saw wasn't about love or family. It was about access. That night, it struck me. My greatest threat wasn't outsiders circling my wealth. It was protecting my son from the ambitions of the woman he had just married. Only days after the wedding, Lauren invited Ethan and me to dinner. She had reserved a table at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, the kind of place where the wine list looked like a foreign novel, and the bill could cover a family's rent for a month. Ethan saw it as a thoughtful gesture, a chance for his wife to bond with me. I knew better. When we arrived, Lauren was already waiting. She wore a sleek tailored suit I recognized from a recent feature in Business Magazine. Her hair was flawless, her smile perfectly rehearsed. On the table sat an expensive bottle of Bordeaux she had pre-ordered. Margaret. Ethan, she greeted warmly, standing to embrace us. I wanted to celebrate our new family. The waiter poured the wine. We exchanged small talk until Lauren opened a folder she had placed beside her plate. Inside were neatly prepared documents. Her tone grew firm, practiced. I've been thinking about our family's future, she began. We have a chance to create something lasting, a foundation we could manage together. It would provide privacy, security, and a sense of purpose. Ethan frowned. A foundation? Yes, Lauren replied smoothly. Picture a family trust combining our resources. The three of us would serve as equal trustees. We could coordinate investments, oversee charitable efforts, and manage wealth across generations. Her words flowed like honey, but the meaning was sharp. She wasn't talking about legacy or giving back. She was talking about control. I listened without interruption, swirling my wine as though it were casual conversation. Ethan looked torn, caught between his loyalty to her and his respect for me. When she paused, waiting for my response, I smiled. That's a bold idea, dear, I said gently, though perhaps a bit heavy for a family lunch. Don't you think? Her smile faltered for the briefest moment. She wanted me to argue, to show my hand. Instead, I gave her nothing. But inside, I felt the first spark of a battle beginning. If Lauren believed she could corner me over lunch, she was about to discover I'd been playing a far more intricate game for years. That night, sleep never came. Her proposal had been too polished, too deliberate. She had drafted documents, rehearsed her words. This wasn't a passing thought. It was a calculated plan. And if she had already prepared paperwork, then she had taken steps behind the scenes. I needed to know how far she had gone. The next morning, I called James Porter, my longtime financial advisor. James had guided Richard and me through countless investments over the years. If anyone could uncover the truth behind the Miller family, it was him. After I explained, James said firmly, "Margaret, what you're describing sounds less like family planning and more like a takeover. If she's making moves this soon, you need to tread carefully." Within a week, his report was ready. It was thicker than I had expected. Charts, numbers, correspondence. The story became clear. The Millers' wealth was little more than smoke and mirrors. Their estate was mortgaged up to 80% of its worth. Their investment accounts had been drained just to maintain appearances. Most of Charles Miller's income came from consulting deals quietly arranged by the new management of his former company, connections I had put in motion when I bought it. In truth, their comfort had been sustained by me all along, though they never knew it. But there was something more damning. Lauren herself had opened multiple new credit lines in the past month. She used the funds to hire a private investigator who specialized in tracing hidden assets and uncovering anonymous investors. She had also reached out quietly to a law firm that dealt with estate disputes and trust battles. I closed the folder slowly. Lauren wasn't simply curious. She was preparing a case against me. What she didn't realize was that my entire life had been built on preparation. And if she wanted to treat this as a chess match, she was already several moves behind. It didn't take long for Lauren to escalate things. Just 2 weeks after the wedding, Ethan told me we'd been summoned to a family meeting at her parents' downtown office. On the surface, the invitation sounded courteous, but the real message was obvious. This wasn't going to be a warm dinner or a casual talk. It was business. When I walked in, the space looked like a scene from a corporate drama. A polished oak table stretched across the room, bottles of water neatly set in front of each chair, and a stack of folders placed at the center. Lauren sat confidently beside Ethan, while her parents, Charles and Diane Miller, positioned themselves directly across from me. At the head of the table, a man in a tailored gray suit introduced himself as Mark Benson, their attorney. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming," Mark began. "We're here to discuss a financial arrangement that ensures fairness and transparency within the family." Lauren slid a folder across the table toward me. Her tone was calm, deliberate. "It's a proposal of family trust. We believe an initial contribution of $15 million from you would be appropriate. With equal voting rights between myself, Ethan, and you, we could manage charitable investments together." I didn't even bother opening the folder. 15 million, I repeated, letting the number hang in the air. Ethan shifted nervously, clearly overwhelmed. "Lauren, maybe this is too fast," he said softly. But she didn't flinch. "This isn't about speed. It's about vision. If we act now, our family can build something extraordinary." I leaned back, folding my hands. "Lauren, before we move forward, there are some other papers you should see." From my bag, I pulled out a folder James had prepared and slid it across the table. For the first time, Lauren's polished confidence wavered. Inside were copies of her new credit lines, her payments to a private investigator, and inquiries with an estate law firm. "You've been busy," I said quietly. "Investigating me, drafting legal strategies, borrowing money you expect to repay once you gain access to mine." Ethan turned toward her, his face pale. "Lauren, is this true?" She stammered. I was only trying to understand what was happening with the family's finances." I looked each of them in the eye. "You asked for transparency. Here it is. I know about your debts, your investigations, your intentions. If you think this meeting gives you leverage, you're mistaken. This isn't your boardroom, it's mine." The silence that followed was crushing. Ethan sat frozen, his eyes darting between his wife and me. Lauren's flawless exterior had cracked. Her parents avoided my gaze, and their attorney shuffled papers but stayed silent. I leaned forward. "This ends in one of two ways. Either you withdraw every investigation, every legal move, every attempt to meddle in my affairs, or we escalate. And believe me, you don't want to see how far I'll take this." Lauren opened her mouth, but I raised a hand to stop her. "In return for your silence, I'll give you $5 million. One payment, no conditions. After that, you will never contact me or my son again." Ethan's voice broke in disbelief. "Mom, $5 million? You can't be serious." "I am," I said firmly. "This isn't generosity. It's clarity. If Lauren married you for love, she won't care about money. If she married you for wealth, she'll take it. Either way, you'll finally have your answer." Her lawyer leaned close, whispering urgently. Lauren glanced at him, then at her parents, whose expressions betrayed their calculations. $5 million, she repeated slowly, testing the weight of the words. "Yes," I replied. $5 million now or nothing later. The choice is yours." The room was so still that the hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. In that silence, I knew the line had been drawn. My ultimatum would decide not just my future, but my son's as well. The next days were filled with tense quiet. Ethan stayed distant, giving me clipped answers torn between loyalty and doubt. Lauren disappeared entirely. When she resurfaced, it was through her attorney. She accepted my offer. $5 million transferred into her chosen account in exchange for permanent separation from our lives. The paperwork was signed swiftly, too swiftly, as if she'd been waiting for this very outcome. Ethan filed for divorce soon after, citing irreconcilable differences. His face carried years in just weeks, lined with disappointment and betrayal. He admitted he had seen the signs, but refused to believe them until now. For weeks, Ethan kept his distance. He said he needed time to process, not just Lauren, but me. 15 years of silence weighed on him. His anger wasn't only about her. It was also about the secrets I had kept. I let him speak without defense. Sometimes, silence is the only answer a parent can give, because explanations can feel like excuses. I wanted him to understand that I hadn't hidden the truth out of distrust, but to give him freedom. Slowly, he began to see. One evening, he called and said, "Mom, I think I understand now. You didn't want me to inherit comfort. You wanted me to inherit resilience." His words felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. The wound wasn't healed yet, but there was hope. Lauren was gone, the marriage dissolved. And for the first time in years, Ethan and I began rebuilding the one thing that mattered most, our trust. Months passed, and life took shape again. I sold the apartment Richard and I had shared for decades, too many memories, too many secrets. I moved to Santa Fe, a place I had always loved, where I wasn't the wealthy widow or the elusive investor. I was simply Margaret, a woman in her 60s who strolled the farmer's market and chatted with artists. There I founded something new, the Richard Fund, in honor of my late husband. It offered scholarships to young engineers from working-class families, helping them turn ideas into patents. Watching those students present their dreams gave me more fulfillment than any profit ever had. My money was no longer just numbers. It was possibility in someone else's hands. Ethan and I still needed time, but we found our way back. There were awkward dinners, resurfaced frustrations, but then a shift. Ethan introduced me to Claire, a teacher with kind eyes and laughter that filled a room. When he told her his mother lived in a modest apartment and drove an old sedan, she smiled and said, "She sounds like a woman who knows her priorities." In that moment, I knew my son had finally found what he deserved. That Christmas, for the first time in years, my table was filled with real laughter. No hidden motives, no masks, just family, cocoa, and off-key carols. Looking back, I realized something profound. The greatest wealth wasn't the billions I had managed. It was choosing peace, living truthfully, and leaving a legacy of integrity. Revenge wasn't destroying Lauren or her schemes. Real revenge was thriving without her shadow. And so I stepped out of invisibility, not by flaunting riches, but by embracing a life where my worth was measured, not in dollars, but in presence.